Shalom. I'm
Hi, Shalom.
very excited to talk with you. Very happy. Unfortunately, can't be for in real life here in Bordeaux.
Yeah, I really wanted to come, but it didn't work out.
We really wanted you to come, but I think this is bigger than us.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, so thank you for accepting to do this video. So Etgar Keret, you're one of Israeli leading writers. You're especially known for your short stories, but you also created books for children, movies, also graphic fiction. And a few years ago, your acclaimed memoir, The 7 Good Years, was published, and you talked about your parents, your brother, your sister, your son, but also your wife, Shira Geffen, with whom you realized last year the very beautiful, poetic, surrealistic miniserie for the French television, L'Agent Immobilier, that a lot of people loved here. You live in Tel Aviv. Your work has been translated in more than 40 languages. I'm sorry this is long, but it's for the people
Of
to
course, no, no,
those who
no.
don't know you.
I love hearing nice thing about myself. You can go on forever.
Okay. Um, your new short story collection published here in France, it was out earlier this spring. The title in French is Incident au fond de la galaxie, and in English it's Fly Already, right? It received the Sapir Award. That is the highest literary award in Israel. Congratulations.
Thank you.
As a reader, and I told you, a great fan of your work, I would define your short story style, and pardon me if I'm not right, as a fantastic mix between the Monty Python, Franz Kafka, and maybe especially for this one, there's something of the Hitchhiker Guide to the Galaxy. So we were supposed to have an entire hour to talk, but because of the whole situation, I am only allowed to ask you 3 questions. So here I stop talking, and it's going to be your turn. My first question is, maybe you know that about French publishing houses. They usually are reluctant to publish short stories from French writers here, and most of the short story collections that are published here are those translated from successful writers like you, Alice Munro, Foster Wallace, things like that. So my question here is, why did you have you chosen this specific genre, and what is it that you like the most about shortness?
Yeah, well, I want to say that for me, I never chose to write short stories. I chose to write stories, and they come out short. It's when I sit down and next to a piece of paper, I don't say, oh, now I'm going to write a 3-page story or a 5-page story. It's just that I have a tale to tell. And the way that I write, I think it's very close to the way that poets write their poems. In that sense that I call it tabula rasa
Yes.
to the page. I really don't know what the story is. I'm searching for the story as I write it. And there is something in this kind of style that it's very emotional and very intense, and therefore cannot last for many pages. I once said in an interview that I see my stories as explosions, and that I've yet to learn how to explode slowly. You know, I don't know how to explode over 500 pages. So for me, the length of my text is always some kind of a side effect. You know, it's never when I sit down, I want to write a story about isolation, or I want to write something about loneliness. I don't say to myself, I want to write something long or something short. But usually I feel that if I have something that I cannot write the way that I like to write my stories, then I would try not to write this project as fiction, but go for a theater play or a TV series or a film screenplay because for me it's easier to plan ahead if I work in a form that is not the total
Right.
goal, you know. So if I work on a script, in the end there is a movie. If I work on a play, in the end there is a theater play on stage. But it's easier for me to plan ahead if I work on some kind of a mediated form and not a direct one like fiction.
A form that you're going to share with other people, because most of those projects are collective when it's theater or movie.
Yes, I think that for me it's a little bit like, you know, to write a short story is like to bake a cake. To write a screenplay is like to write down a recipe for a cake. And the idea is that when you cook, sometimes you can cook intuitively without knowing how much salt or sugar you've added, just tasting
Without
and
a
making
recipe.
it. And but when you write a recipe, because other people need to use it, you have to be more aware. So in bigger projects, when I need to be more aware, then working on a screenplay is a little bit easier. It's like working on a blueprint for a building, you know.
Yeah.
I can look at it, I can assess it, I can discuss it with other people. But short stories are something totally different. It's much closer to kind of dreaming when you're awake. It's basically this feeling of losing control and letting the story carry you somewhere.
Thank you. Yeah, I read somewhere, or I heard you say that the fact that you write short stories something sometimes uncontrollable, that it's like what you said about the explosion, and also that it's your way of coping with reality.
Yes.
And talking about reality, apart from the ongoing pandemic crisis going on now, I've read that there is also a political crisis, huge political crisis going on in Israel, with hundreds of thousands of people demonstrating.
And me and my family among them.
I saw the picture. I saw one pictures and demonstrating like every day, despite of the lockdown. And I saw also the Black Flag movement protesting about Bibi, who has been there for, I mean, since 1996 or something like that.
Yeah, if I would sum up the protest, I think that most of the protests are about the fact that a prime minister who has right now 3 ongoing trials on bribery and on other serious accusations cannot really function objectively in his position. Because he has to run the country and escape getting into jail. And there is a clash of interests which we feel many times every day. You know, for example, you know, a day before they were supposed to address his case in court, then the Ministry of Law decided that the courthouse will be closed because of the pandemic. You know, he decided that on the midnight, when the next day, 9 a.m., they were supposed to discuss the prime minister case. So I really feel that, you know, that we can argue how talented Netanyahu is as a leader, but I think that an entire country can find somebody who will function as a prime minister during the time of his trial, so we won't have to deal with such big moral issues. I also think that, you know, that for a citizen who has to obey the laws of the country, it's easier to do so when his prime minister is not standing on trial for not obeying the laws of the country. You know,
of course,
it's like, you know, if I have a teacher, I would rather have a teacher who had prepared his homework, you know, to set himself as an example for me as a student.
Yeah, I understand that, and also the fact that maybe you feel like the country is not the priority for him, and in such a situation you need someone who really takes the country seriously, especially that for you it's like, and we can read that in your books, people really they sacrifice part of their life for this country, and they don't want someone else not to treat it correctly and not to take it.
And also I think that there is something in the story of the country of Israel that it was formed in a way to fix past atrocities. You know, if it's the Holocaust or Russian pogroms or Spanish Inquisition or being driven away by by Rome, from
living in ghettos and
all those kind of things. So I think that, you know, the right way to fix it is by creating a place that is not racist and that fights for equality and fights for all those things that Jews were deprived of when they were in the diaspora. There is no point in creating a haven if this haven will have inherent injustices in it.
Of course. And to relate it that with your books and to the situation of the crisis, I have the impression that the more chaotic it is around you, the stronger it is for you the need to tell it and kind of to tell a story about it and kind of put it in a story. When you were talking about the expression, but also is it a way to cope or to put a structure around all this chaos around you?
Oh, for sure. You know, I often compare creativity and humor to an airbag in your car, which in the case that, you know, it inflates when you are in trouble. And I think for me, when reality functions and makes sense and it's not overwhelming, I have no need to write a story. For me, the stories come when reality is too much in one way or another. You know, I could be too scared or too angry or too much in love, you know. But when I feel that I'm overflowing, when I feel that I'm stuttering and sweating and cannot explain myself in words, this is when I go and write stories. And the truth is that it's something that I've learned from my parents, because my father, he survived the Holocaust by hiding in a hole in the ground for 600 days. And my father told me that each and every day, when he would wake up as a child, he would try to imagine an alternate reality, a parallel universe. And in this universe, everything was the same, but he would change just one detail. So he could say, okay, I'm in a parallel universe where everything is the same, but there are no Nazis. Or I'm in a parallel universe and Nazis do seek Jews, but they just want to give them candies. And every day he would make up a different, better reality. And when I asked my father, what was the point in doing so? So he said, the moment that you can imagine something, it becomes an option. Even if you imagine the most ridiculous and unachievable things, the fact that you can imagine it means that it can exist.
Yeah.
And in tough situation, the ability to understand that there is an alternative existence, that what the reality that you are in, it's not the only option, that there are many other options, it's a great comfort. It's a way of, in a way, how could I say, expanding your reality.
I know that, yes, I understand. And especially talking about this, there is one short story that in this book that gave the name in French, Incident au fond de la galaxie.
It's also the Hebrew title, by the way. The Americans changed it, but this is the original title.
The title, yes. And it's about an escape room. Called a glitch at the edge of the galaxy, and there is a man named Michael Warszawski, and he wants to bring his mother on this in this escape room on Holocaust Remembrance Day, and he is informed by an email by the owner of this place that the escape room will be closed that day, especially because it is Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's a wonderful, very short story. It's absurd, but at the same time, I felt that it touches the sorrow that is buried deep inside of us, deep inside of me, and I thought it was so accurate, and at the same time, it really shows the mean reality of a society that has to live with even more than 70 years after the burden of a genocide. And at the same time, I thought this is like what some people in Israel call a Holocaust joke. I don't know if...
Yeah. Well, you know, for me, I tell you two things. That first of all, the story about this guy who insists that that they'll open the escape room for his mother on Holocaust Memorial Day because she's a Holocaust survivor. It has to do with a very early experience I had in my life, because both my parents were Holocaust survivors, and both of them suffered a lot during the Holocaust. So the days they dreaded the most was the Holocaust Memorial Day, because the Holocaust Memorial Day was a day in which they were unable to escape the memory of the Holocaust, because everything in television is about the Holocaust, everything in the radio is about the Holocaust, all other activities are being cancelled. So when I was a child, I thought that Holocaust Memorial Day was a prank to torment my parents, that it was some kind of an evil action making my mother confront the death of her parents and brother again, and not giving her any place to escape. So I used to hate Holocaust Remembrance Day as a child, because for me, I remember the Holocaust every day, because my parents were a living monument of the Holocaust. But the idea that for one day they have no place to escape seemed to me like pure evil. You know, when I was 6 years old, you know, I really didn't understand the country. It seemed like a mean country. And I tried to take this infantile sentiment and put it into the mind of a grown-up man that will be able to give all kinds of elaborate arguments, but at the same time to be as infantile and as dogmatic, you know, as kind of rigid as a child. And this is, I think, how the story originally came to be. So for me, I'm saying, even if it's funny, the source of this story is great pain. And what I wanted to do in this story is to talk about something that actually had really bothered my parents. Because in Israel, there is a lot of suffering. There is the suffering of the Jews coming from the Holocaust. There are suffering from Jews coming from communist countries who were persecuted for being Jews. And there is all the suffering of the Palestinians who had suffered not only from Israelis, but from other Arab countries and live a horrible condition, many of them, you know. So I often say that many times the Middle East feels like the Eurovision of victimhood. You have all those victims, each of them trying to excuse himself from responsibility, saying, I suffered so much, you cannot judge me, you know?
Yeah.
And the effect of this kind of being immersed in your victimhood, that you automatically lose your sense of responsibility. Because if you're a victim, you don't take choice about your life. Whatever you do is you're doing as an outcome of the fact that you were done wrong in the past. It's kind of like, you know, it's like a special ticket that can get you on any plane. And in this story, I wanted really to give this guy who to put this person who feels that he's the ultimate victim of the universe. And any person who will try to talk about his or her suffering next to him will have to deal with the fact that he'll diminish the suffering, saying, compared to my suffering, this is nothing. I don't want to hear about your pain. My pain is much greater. And this is something that I often feel in political conflicts in the Middle East. This position where everybody just wants to talk about their society pain. You know, because many times when I talk to other Israelis about Palestinian occupation, they immediately talk about terrorist attack victims. Those two issues are not connected. I don't want to compare the pain of a Jewish girl who became a cripple in a suicide bombing to the pain of a Palestinian boy who became crippled being bombed from an Israeli plane. And as long as you have this discussion of who suffered most and who suffered first, and you know,
you're not getting it anywhere.
Then basically you block any chance for empathy from the two sides of the conflict.
This was my question: is like when you write that kind of story, and is it like you think that literature is a place for empathy, or is it like, and it can be both, a way of making people feel ill at ease and then think about it? And of course, I'm not revealing the end of the fantastic end of this short story, because it blows my mind. I didn't expect that to happen. But just for the question of empathy and reflection.
for me, I think the most important function of art is basically the ability to empathize with, without taking the risk that empathizing has in real life. Because, you know, because for example, if you and me, we meet in a supermarket and we fight over a toilet paper package, okay?
This happened here.
And we start punching each other, okay?
Yeah.
So if every time I punch you, I say, oh my God, she looks in pain. Why did I do that? Why did I make her beautiful face bleed? This is not, then I will not fight you efficiently. So when I fight you, I have to block myself. I say, she's the enemy.
I'm not a human like you.
She's the thief of toilet paper. She's, you know, she's the demon of not letting me go to the toilet, you know?
Yeah.
I'm gonna destroy her. She has no feelings. She was sent from the Death Star to haunt me. This is the only way we can fight. But the idea about art, that we can take a step back. So if I read a book about you, there is no risk. You know, you are not going to ask me for a favor or for any money. You are not going to say that you want to marry me or murder me. You are just a mind that I can slip into and see reality from an angle that I've never seen it before.
And understand, maybe.
And understand. So I think that, for example, you know, let's say if I would say to an American, you know what it means to be a black American these days? Come to my car and I take you to a neighborhood in LA and you see how those people are scared from the police, how they don't have the equal rights. And the guy will say to me, I don't want to go there because maybe they'll mug me. Maybe they'll hurt me. So I can say to him, you know what? You want to stay safe? Stay in your home and read a book. And if you read a book, not only will you be safe enough to take off your guard, but you'll be able to see this neighborhood not from the outside, but through the eyes of someone. And so I think that the ability to empathize is always there in art, and especially in literature. And I think that that actually in this age where we live in a much more dichotomized society, you know, I see it in Israel, I see it in the US, I see it in other places. If I grew up in an age where polemic was basically a bridge for people, you know, to trade ideas and to change their mind, now it seems that wherever I go, it's like two tribes who just want to destroy each other. And I think that in this kind of climate, then literature becomes a necessity. We need to have this kind of safe place, you know, safe corner where we can sit down and instead of hate and be afraid from people who do not think like us, just to be invited for the universe. And in the end, you know, we don't have to accept their point of view. We just have to accept the fact that they're human. They could be human and wrong. They could be human and annoying. But just to accept the fact that, you know, that they are not the Antichrist. They are just people who their minds had led them to a different route.
I think our time is over. So thank you very much pour les lecteurs et lectrices de Lettres du Monde, surtout lisez Incident au fond de la galaxie d'Etgar Keret et puis lisez tous ces livres parce qu'ils sont fantastiques depuis le début. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, and I hope that next time we'll meet. It will
I
be for real.
So.